A warm welcome to another Essential Quinn talk. Tonight I'm dealing with Boris Johnson's visit to Washington to beat the drum for more military equipment for Ukraine in their war and fight with Russia. But the interesting story is that Boris had agreed to appear on the Tucker Carlson show, but at the last minute withdrew. In essence, Boris bottled it. Let's watch a short clip and see what Boris himself has said.
I have been appalled to discover how many people, I've just been here for a couple of days, it's been wonderful, I always have a wonderful time in Washington, but I've been amazed and horrified by how many people are frightened of a guy called Tucker Calson. Has anybody heard of Tucker Carlson? What is it with this guy? All these wonderful Republicans seem somehow intimidated by his perspective.
Clearly, Boris Johnson has no idea who Tucker Carlson is. Tucker Carlson is one of the largest news shows nightly in America. Let's hear what Tucker has to say about Boris Johnson's non-appearance.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson sashayed into Washington yesterday, trying to sell lawmakers on a new world war. So naturally, as we told you last night, we invited him on this show. Boris Johnson is a famously articulate man. He's the kind of guy who can quote Aeschylus from memory in a dinner toast and still make you laugh. So we figured he was perfect. If there is one person on Earth who might plausibly explain how a war between nuclear-armed Western powers could benefit anyone but China, that man would be Boris Johnson. So we made the offer, and Johnson said he was interested in coming on. But then, a few hours before airtime, his publicist called to say that Boris Johnson wasn't coming. And that meant that Boris Johnson, reputed to be the smartest leader of any English-speaking country in the world, did not want to publicly defend his position on Ukraine. He was afraid to take questions about it. We found that disappointing, not just because we had assumed Johnson was more impressive than that, but mostly because it is a subject that badly needs to be debated, and soon. Millions would die in the war that Boris Johnson is promoting. The public has a right to know, why are we doing this, before it starts? And as you can probably tell, it looks like it's starting very soon. So that was our experience with Boris Johnson yesterday. Given all that, we were actually shocked, this afternoon to see Johnson show up at a neocon think tank called the Atlantic Council and say this.
I've been amazed and horrified by how many people are frightened of a guy called Tucker Calson. Has anybody heard of Tucker Carlson? What is it with this guy? All these wonderful Republicans seem somehow intimidated by his perspective.
All these cowards in Washington are afraid of this show, Boris Johnson said derisively. Yet somehow he never mentioned that he is one of them. Again, we had just invited Johnson on this show hours before he said that. It was remarkable and remarkably dishonest. We knew that Johnson himself was a coward. We watched during COVID as he transitioned into a terrified old woman. But we had no idea he was also a liar. We should have known. There is no popular support in this country or in any country in Europe for what Boris Johnson is now pushing. The overwhelming majority of people understand that a third world war would mean the destruction of the West. They don't want that. Why would they want that? They live here. Only the Chinese government wants that. And yet, despite that total lack of popular support, it looks like, as of tonight, we're going to have that war anyway. And that war will be waged, connoisseurs of irony will be delighted to know, in the name of, quote, democracy. We're going to have a war for democracy that nobody voted for or wants. Shouldn't we have a popular referendum on the war for democracy? No. It's almost hilarious, really. But it's sad, too. And you've got to wonder how it happened. A year after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we are much farther from a negotiated settlement and much, much closer to a nuclear conflict. How? Well, that happened because of lying. Dishonesty made it possible.
So very strong words there from Tucker Carlson. Dishonesty made this possible, and there is no support for what Johnson is pushing, neither in the United States, in the United Kingdom, or Europe at large. Don't be surprised about Boris Johnson though, Tucker. Here in the UK, we have known for some time that Boris is a liar, that he fails to deliver on everything he promises. The Conservative Party sacked him as their leader and so deposed him as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Having lost his position, now he is working full-time with no shame to mobilise the West and NATO against Russia. But on whose payroll does he work, as he is not a representative of the British government? He has no official position in international affairs. And how does Rishi Sunak feel about this endeavour? In Washington, he pleaded for the delivery of more tanks and planes to Ukraine, specifically F-16 fighter bombers. But I don't think Boris cares much for the soldiers who are effectively cannon fodder in this type of war, which resembles First World War battle lines. This is effectively, strategically, an unwinnable war and could lead to nuclear annihilation, as very succinctly put by Tucker Carlson. Now, Putin is no saint. I am no fan of his, but increasingly people are aware of the total corruption and institutional evil inherent in Western democracy. Thank you for watching another Essential Quinn. Let me leave you with these key words of truth.